How's it going? You're here with me, Chris Aguilar, and Martin Depict. Martin Depict is a photographer down in Los Angeles, California. On top of running his own Instagram page that really has quite a few followers and a lot of great photos. He also is a creative director over at French Fry Studio, which is a social media agency, if I'm correct, down in LA. Cool. Well, hey, Martin, the reason I want to bring you on this interview and learn more about you is really learn about your style, how you do photography, and pretty much how you progress from, your college days to being, a creative director and one of the top photographers on Instagram.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so dude, let me know where you want to start, man.
Yeah, I think this would be great for you. So for some people I know that might know you, you're a big fan of Annie Leibovitz. And so to just jump right into it, I want to see, what is it about her photography that you're so attracted to?
So the reason Annie Leibovitz has been one of my favorite photographers, I think, even from before I even knew photography was like this passion of mine. But even when I was a kid, I used to get like the Sports Illustrated for Kids. I don't think it even it exists anymore, but Sports Illustrated for Kids was, excuse me. It was like this magazine that was essentially, it had like a bunch of cool illustrations and stuff targeted at younger kids, probably like 8 years old to about 15, something like that. And in those magazines, every one of those magazines had a Got Milk ad. And for me, it was always like, Malcolm in the Middle. He did, like, the dude that played Malcolm in the Middle, I forget his name. He had this really cool Got Milk ad, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, I think I still have these magazines somewhere here. Like, I collect, like, the magazines that I have. But, like, those pictures that I still, like, keep in my brain, they were taken by Annie Leibovitz. And all these years later, now that I've turned this into my career, I look back on her career, and the reason why I'm so fond of her career is because just the evolution of it. Like, she was a photographer that really was just taking pictures with her family, took off to San Francisco, got a job with Rolling Stone magazine, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was Rolling Stone magazine. And from there, she went on to be like a fly on the wall with some of the biggest rock bands of that time in the 70s. And then she became photographer for Vanity Fair and started shooting all these, these icons in a way that you wouldn't normally see them. Like some of the ones that come to mind, some of her most famous photos are like John Lennon and Yoko, where he's naked, cuddled up next to her. Just like, for your subjects to be that comfortable around you is just, it's mind blowing to me. And so, like, I think it's just more of like, I don't think that it's her being a photographer. I think it's her being herself around these people and hanging out with them, and then getting the opportunity to take pictures that are very, sentimental and like almost vulnerable, and like even, taking photos of Demi Moore when she was pregnant. Everyone recognizes that photo. Even till like just recently, where she shot like Justin Bieber and Hailey Baldwin, I think, for Vanity Fair on the cover of that stuff. So, she's always been around these big names and has gotten these opportunities. And to see where her work came from, that was very, very raw and gritty, with like bands like, from the old rock and roll bands in the 70s to the pop stars and icons that she's shooting today. Just seeing her transition is just very, it inspires me to kind of like keep going with this, because it just shows me that from her career and her blueprint, it shows me that my career will also evolve with the times. It will never just stay stagnant. So if you stay with one thing long enough, you're going to change as a person and as an artist.
Well, so the one thing I always found interesting with your shots is, obviously, like, everything looks great, it's a good photo, but there's always something new that you kind of experiment with there that I like. Like, for instance, one of the ones with, totally forgot her name. It's one of the most recent ones on your page, where you kind of have more of the blue and black and, like, yellow kind of fade. Like, that's, in some words, like, it's just random, right? It's not something you normally see from your content or other people's, but you still put it out there, and always it's good for some reason. Like, where do you take the risk there?
I think with that kind of stuff is just, I mean, I've been posting on Instagram for, since I think I got on Instagram in 2013, 2014. I'm pretty sure it's 2013. And since then, I've just been posting and posting and posting. Around 2014, I decided, I was like, look, you know what? I'm gonna make this a photography page.
Okay.
And at first, it was like this a page that was just meant for my clothing line. You know, I started Depict clothing in college. Like all these other kids that I went to school with, they all wanted to have their own clothing line, and I was just like one of them. And it ended up just transforming into something else, to where I was just kind of like, you know what? I really like taking these photos. I'm going to share them with people. And it went from Instagram being such a small thing, and all these models working with, you know, with each other for free, and photographers working with each other for free, from like, you know, connecting on like Model Mayhem or like on Instagram itself. It was a very like weird time, but at the same time, like it was very easy to gain an audience as long as you work with the right people. And so during that time, I just kind of like worked and worked and worked. And after a while, you just start to notice that you fall into a rhythm. And now with these things that like I hate looking at my work and going like, fuck, it's just the same old shit.
Yeah.
And just like, and like my background is in graphic design. So like I went to FITM, I got a graphic design degree. And so I can do so much more with the computer with my photos than is intended to just be like a static image. So yeah, like doing GIFs or like animating things, you know, like it's something different and a different way to show my work. So it's something that I sometimes, for sure, like if I'm in the studio, you know, it's always good to get the safe photos and like, cool, window light, you know, 1 strobe, 2 strobes, get the photos that you know are safe. And then, you know, if you have time, throw in an extra light, you know, throw on a gel, mess with something, make something, you know, experiment while you have the time. Because if you don't experiment, you're not going to really progress in this, you know, in photography, period. I think it's one of those, like photography, I've said it on my own podcast, that photography has like a very steep learning curve. So like you'll learn everything that you need to know about photography probably around the first 6 months. And so you'll learn shutter speed, f-stop, ISO, you'll learn long exposures, all that stuff. You can learn all that stuff in a really short amount of time. And which means that when you're taking these photos, you're constantly getting excited and you're getting these adrenaline rushes of like, wow, I can't believe I took that. After you've learned everything and you've tried almost everything, you start to kind of like peak, and then the excitement goes down every time you take a photo. You're like, it's not that good. You know, I can do better. And you start pushing yourself, but the excitement isn't there. Every so often you'll take a photo or you'll do something in post to where you take an image even further, and that excitement comes back. But those moments are even rarer now than when you first started, to where you're constantly getting those moments every day or every other day or every time you're even taking a photo. Yeah. Because you're just surprising yourself with what you can do with this tool, as opposed to 10, 11 years later with the same tool, you know, doing the same thing.
Interesting. So then, obviously, I know you mentioned like you will experiment with different strobes and stuff, but like, even when you do that, does it become almost like harder to get that same kind of like rush and high? Like it's almost like a tolerance to it? Yeah,
100%. I think you become so, and I've heard it from models that I work with, because models work with, I'm assuming that they work with photographers that they're like, wow, this is so dope. You know, like I love these photos. And like, I've gotten that rush so many times that when I take photos now, you know, I guess I don't show that emotion anymore, because I've had models be like, oh, do you like them? And I'm like, yeah, I like them. It's like, oh, you don't look like you like them. And I was like, no, I do like them. It's not that I don't like them. It's just, you know, like, I always want to push myself to do better. Yeah. And like, in a way, it brings, it makes them want to try even harder with me to like, you know, they'll take direction a little better, or, you know, work with me to get me what I want in a photo.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't look at my work and think that. They just look at my work and they're like, oh, it's just some hot girl. But the process that you go with someone or that you go through with a model to get the photo that you take, that process, going back to Annie Leibovitz, like that process, that back and forth, the connection you have with someone, that's what's important to me.
Well, so when I was down there for one of your workshops, I was fascinated because the photo shoots I've done have always been like with friends or just like also amateurs, like same level as me and like career-wise. And we would shoot, and it felt like I had to kind of direct everything. But there's times like I didn't really know what to do, but it felt awkward because they're also just standing there waiting for the direction. When I was with you in Sydney, it was like, oh, you two are both artists trying to like play with each other. It's like, oh, that's so cool. And like not even like obviously taught me, but like watching Sydney and like when I got the chance to shoot with her and seeing how she was like, okay, well, what if we tried this? I'm like, oh, you're part of this process. Like that's reassuring. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think with Sydney, it's someone that I've worked with for a long time. So with her specifically, she takes photos so often with other photographers, and she has so much more experience in front of the camera that for someone that has never worked with her, it's really good for you to go up to her and say, hey, you move however you feel freely or what you feel confident doing. And I'll just like direct you when I see, moments that I really like. And that's basically what I said in that workshop is that like when you're working with a new model, it's super important to connect with them and get on that same wavelength to where like when you first start shooting, you guys are on completely opposite different wavelengths. You want to shoot something specific, but don't really know how to ask for it maybe. And she, maybe wants to shoot something and doesn't know how to ask for it or give you what you initially want in front of the camera. And so like that first look, or two even in front of the camera is usually just like a warm up look with a model for me is to where I'm just kind of like, cool, bring something, that you want to wear, that you want to take photos in, we'll capture it. And, just do whatever you feel is comfortable. I'll shoot it. And if I like something, I'll call it out. And so by the time that first or second look is done, you already know like how she moves. You're kind of used to her movements. You're used to her poses, her faces. Most models have like only like X amount of looks in them. So when you're working with them, by that time you get to that third look, it's maybe a look that you really want to do or a light setup that you really want to do as a photographer. And so she's gotten comfortable with you. She knows what you're looking for. You maybe show her a couple of examples of shots of inspiration. It's like, this is what I'm going for, but I really like what you were doing in these first two looks. And you show her examples of photos that you've taken already. And it was like, so let's try something like this with this lighting, maybe you positioning more this way with your chin facing this way a little bit more. And it just kind of, it's more of like putting puzzle pieces together to where, like you just want to make sure that you get the best possible photo. And like you've been with me while I have a camera in my hands, like I'm shooting so much frames that like, I really do take advantage of this digital system because it's with film, you would have to really just pick and choose the photos that you want. With digital, you throw like a huge, memory card in there, like 128 gig of memory card. Yeah. And you just hold the shutter down. Well, that's not technically what I'm doing, but I'm shooting in bursts. I'm just like as she moves, if I see something that I like, click, click, click. Something else, click, 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 something else, click, click, click. And I'm trying to capture movements. And I always say this is that when you're trying to capture a moment, a model, a pose, the perfect pose is never the one that she hits because it always looks really stiff. It doesn't look as fluid. Okay. So it's usually it's usually the frame after or the frame right before she hits that pose, and you get, like something a little softer, not as structured, something a little more organic.
Interesting. So I mean, that's all the process leading up to it. So when you're planning a shoot, do you, like, I guess how much planning goes into it? Because it seems like a lot of your process is really like organic and like almost like you're painting something on the spot. Like, what do you do in preparation up until like you're with the model?
Yeah, I think as of recently, it's really been more of models coming to the studio and just us shooting on a whim. But there has been, when I do, on a rare occasion, when I do get to plan a shoot, I'm looking through inspo, I'm looking at lighting setups, I'm looking at the model that I have, what I think that model would look good doing, you know, her eye color, her face shape, how I think light would look on her, certain light backlit, you know, side profile, all this stuff. I'm taking all these things into consideration. And I love just a model coming to me and say, like, cool, like, I brought what you requested, you know, wardrobe rise, you know, you just let me know where you want me, you know, how you want me to stand and all that stuff. And a lot of the time it's just like a back and forth again. It's never really me directing them 100% because I want them to feel some sort of ownership of these photos as well. So like them moving in a way that they feel comfortable doing, and then, you know, me asking them, okay, now the shot that I'm really envisioning, now that you're comfortable in front of these lights and the camera, the shot that I really want to get is this. And I explain to them what I want, you know, and it doesn't always work. Like, you're sometimes, like, when you plan a shoot and you don't get exactly what you want, like, it's, you know, it's a little disheartening, but at the same time, you know, like, it's kind of like an uphill battle. Like, you never really know what you're going to get. And you might intend to get something that you want to get, and you might end up with something less, or you might end up with something that is 10 times even more amazing than what you expected.
Yeah.
So, like, there has been some shoots where I shoot with people and I tell them, I was like, yeah, I didn't really like the shoot, you know, like, I'm sorry.
Really?
And yeah, and, you know, no one ever sees those photos, and it sucks, you know, like, but at the same time, like, I think it wouldn't do me justice releasing photos that I wasn't proud of, and it wouldn't do them justice releasing photos that I don't think they look best in.
So interesting. So I feel like for someone of your, like, I feel like I'm totally on your team, right? Like, for someone at your caliber, like, when you have those, like, not so best shoots, is it that there are photos that just aren't usable? Like, you just know these aren't good, or are they just, like, not Martin standards, but, like, to the rest of the world, they would just be like, oh, wow, that's a great shot, and no one even realizes it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll go back and look at old photos, and I'm like, oh, this one's great. But the thing is that, you know, and I'll send the model those single photos that I think look awesome, but it's something to where, like, I feel like just getting one image out of a whole day or out of a whole set bothers me, to where, like,
okay,
you know, and maybe it'll come to a time to where I'm just kind of like, cool, like, these are all photos that the whole set didn't go as expected, but we got this one moment. And I guess that's what it's all about, is capturing, you know, individual moments. But, like, I like having a model in front of me, wearing whatever she's wearing, and then going through the motions of, like, this is how we started, this is how we ended. And so, like, you get to see, you know, where we went from, you know, like, how we got to where we were, whether, you know, they're wearing more clothes at the beginning of the shoot, or they're wearing less clothes at the end of the shoot, or vice versa, you know, or they're putting on clothes, or maybe, you know, yeah, I mean, like, or maybe it's just like playing with fabric, or playing with lighting. You know, I've seen so many photos out there, and I think it's just like because of the digital age, like, there's so much more content out there that it's almost it's almost what's the word? it almost bothers me to the point. It almost bothers me to the point that there's so much content out there that not a lot of people are really paying attention to it for more than a couple seconds. You know, so you want something that's easily digestible. You want something that people are going to see, not think too much into. And then the photos that you do want people to really take in and digest, maybe save those ideas or those photos or moments for, you know, a subject or a model that you know really is going to get those eyes on it. Because, you know, I don't know, maybe that's like a little bad for me to say, but there's no point in wasting your best ideas on something that is only going to get a couple seconds of people's attention.
Yeah. Well, so that was one question I want to get to you. Whereas, like, I feel like Instagram is like the place to share your photos because like the audience and reach wise. But for you, you put all this time, all this effort into these photos, and you post it, and then obviously, like, with the algorithm and everything, it's gone within like the next 30 minutes. And
yeah.
That, like, I guess obviously you get like the rush from taking the shot, but what kind of gives you back that validation of, yeah, this is a great shot when you put it out there and it's kind of gone fast, right? Like,
well, so this whole year, and I'll say this about, and to kind of like sum everything up. This whole year I've posted less this year than any other year before I've been active on Instagram. And it might have a little bit to do with the algorithm. You know, it might have a little bit to do with just how busy I've been. But to me, I think it's, you know, it's getting validation from other people that are in my industry and that are willing to pay for the talent that I do have. Like, that's validation to me. Like, it maybe, I mean, you know, as an artist, yeah, I get that it sucks to put like a monetary value on art craft, you know, and maybe that's like me considering myself a sellout. But at the same time, like, when you're doing this, I've been doing this for 10 years professionally. You know, I want to be able to make money doing this.
Yeah.
So getting back to that point is making sure that I can have a career outside of Instagram, because like you said, the algorithm has affected so much of it. Before, I used to post 3 times a day when there was no algorithm. When everything was chronological, I would post 3 times a day, get all these impressions, get all these likes. Yeah, it was great, but I wasn't making as much money. Now I'm posting a lot less on Instagram. You know, not a lot of people are seeing my work on social media, but I'm getting other opportunities outside of social media that are actually paying my bills, that are helping me get to the next level of my career. You know, like, Instagram could have been one of those platforms that really helps photographers and creators get to this point of monetization. But in the same way, doing what they're doing, it's really helped, or it's really knocked us down a couple pegs, because, and I think I told you when we went out to dinner that night, you know, I've lost jobs to someone's cousin with a DSLR camera. Yeah. I lost jobs to people who are a lot less, you know, experienced than me, to people who, you know, maybe don't know how to edit their images as much, and maybe they're hiring 2 or 3 more people as opposed to just one person. And, you know, that's on them. You know, it's not for me, you know, to tell people like, oh, like, hire me because of this. And, you know, it's up to me, and because of my social media, show them my worth. And that has never been because of my following. I've actually gone out of my way to not ever talk about my following or anything like that, because, to be 100% honest, my following is just mainly, you know, dudes that follow a lot of the models that I work with. And, you know, those dudes don't necessarily, I mean, like, me thinking logically, I don't think those dudes necessarily support my work. I think they maybe support the models, and maybe they can't follow the models themselves because their girlfriends gets mad, or you know, or their wives, and they don't want to get caught following some model, but they can follow a photographer whose thumbnail is just their logo, as opposed to following, you know, a model who's, you know, their body, and it's just like, you know, a bunch of stuff like that. And so that's just me thinking logically of like, you know, and don't get me wrong, there's definitely like a percentage of people that do follow me that really do support me and my work, and I'm very grateful for that. But I've definitely gotten to the point to where, and I think Casey Neistat said this, to where I would rather have, you know, 100,000 people or less even for me, you know, really follow me and support me than to have all these people follow me and just like be like whatever about it. You know, so I want, you know, getting the recognition is awesome, getting validation is awesome, but for me it's, you know, when you from the outside looking in, a photographer provides a service. We take photos for people, we edit photos for people. You know, as a graphic designer, I'm editing those photos, I'm adding copy to those photos, I'm laying out photos, you know, in different ways. You know, I get asked from clients like, oh, could you, you know, could you lay this out in a grid and put the name of the product here and this and that? Like, product photography is a huge part of my work. It's, you know, it's what I started out doing, and that's what pays the bills still. And luckily I've been able to make a lot more money shooting models, you know, as of lately, but it's because of, I believe it's because of me as a person and as a photographer, not because of my social media.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Like I said, I think when it comes to your work, like, I think you kind of brought this up a little bit earlier in the conversation where it's like, there's like the two aspects of your photo, right? There's like, one, this is just a hot model, and that's going to like sell it on like its own regard. But then like for the people that are really photography buffs, are going to say like, oh wow, this is beautiful. Like the lighting is here, or this, like the little details that like people nerd out about. But it's like, okay, it's just a bunch of lines. I don't understand why lines are important in photography, right?
Yeah.
But then probably comes with that, right? If you have a lot of hot women on your page, it's going to attract a large audience, but like they're going to be there for a different reason than probably some of your more fans, right?
For sure.
Interesting.
For sure. And I think that if I could translate that, you know, I don't think that there is ever going to be another Instagram. I think that there's been other brands or companies that have tried to be, you know, very photocentric, like 500 pixel, or, you know, I don't know what other ones are out there. There's a lot of other, you know, social media like companies that are like Instagram and like to, you know, be all about their photography and, you know, post your f-stop and your shutter speed and give everyone your specs. And that's cool. But at the same time, like, you know, then you get a completely different audience who's looking at your work and dissecting it to the point to where like, why did he shoot this at this aperture when he could have shot it at this aperture and get this much more in focus or this much more bokeh? I definitely think that right now we're living in a time where there's a lot of photographers out there who just get these lenses that are able to open a 1.4 or 1.2 and only use them at 1.4 and 1.2. And I think I really want to make a YouTube video not calling people out, but like telling people like, yo, like, you know, like, and showing them examples. Like, here's a Gucci ad and there's no bokeh in this. Here's a Prada ad and there's no bokeh in this Prada ad. Like, bokeh is something that has been like glorified by like Apple and by, you know, all these people on YouTube to where like because it does isolate the subject and it makes it look amazing to the point to where it doesn't matter what's in the background because it gets blown the fuck out anyway. Yeah. So, you know, like, but when you have a photographer that gets the same lenses and maybe doesn't shoot it at 1.2, but maybe is shooting it at 2.8 or, you know, 3.5 and is getting a better image, utilizing lines in the background or utilizing the foreground or, you know, different things in the frame, that to me is the real, that to me is like what sets the real photographers from the Instagram photographers apart. And I hate the term Instagram photographer because that's a bucket I get put in. And I get put in that bucket because, again, I'm one of those people that has gained all this notoriety from social media, but I don't like being put in that bucket because I'm not using social media to make money per se. Like, nothing on social media pays me. I'm barely about to make my first $100 on YouTube, believe it or not. Like, that to me is like crazy because I try on YouTube for a couple months, then I get really busy, and then I can't, and then it's hard for me to like go back and stay consistent with it. And you know, the fact that even any social media company is like, hey, you made $100, like, here you go. You know, like, if Instagram was like that a couple years ago, because like I've seen my photos, people use my photos in merch without asking. I've had to send cease and desist out. You know, people using my photos, you know, on websites and stuff, and not tagging me or not crediting me. Like any online publication, and I know this because I used to work for a very small online publication, but you have to tag and source where you got the image. If you don't tag and source where you got the image, you can be hit with a copyright lawsuit. And so like, and then people don't really understand like what copyright lawsuit is, because people that are really in that legal world, they're making either a lot of money or they're losing a lot of money, because it's hard to tell what is breaking the rules and what isn't breaking the rules. And because of Instagram, or actually I think it was in the UK, they passed a law to where you can't post anything on social media or on the internet, on your website or whatever that isn't yours, or that you don't have the license to, or something like that. I could be wrong about that, but I did know that there's like some law over there that got passed.
That. I know what you mean. So like, for one of my jobs, like, we're always doing like stock videos, stuff like that. So we're taking stock footage, stocks from like Pexels and Pixabay. And every time I take it, my buddies are like, "Are we allowed to use this?" I'm like, "I think so. Let me double check." Every time I'm reading, like, "This sounds like we're good," but I don't know. And there was one day where we got an email from the lawyer firm saying, "You stole our image for this. You're gonna owe us this much money in back pay for like a year's worth of work." We're like, "Well, we got that from Pexels," and I guess one of our people grabbed it, but they grabbed like a sponsored one without realizing it. And it's like, oh, that was an easy mistake to make. And luckily everything worked out, but it was one of those like fears of like, are we about to get like sued right now for like a blog image?
Yeah.
Damn. You know? So it's very real. Yeah.
Dude, and those lawsuits, like you said, like, for if you use an image for 2 years of someone without paying them, like, it adds up to like a couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think people really understand that, you know, like, to where, I don't know, like, it's super, the line, no one knows where that line is. But if Instagram were to come out with like, hey, you can't post in anything that isn't yours, that would be awesome, because then, or if people did have to post, if people did post curated images, they would have to tag whoever shot the photo or whoever created the video or whoever made the GIF or whatever it may be. That would be great. And then giving people monetary value for that, like turning Instagram into a stock, basically a stock site, you know, because there's so many brands on there now, and I run a couple brands that I curate content for, and I tag the creators whenever I can, but sometimes you can't find where that image was made or who made it.
Yeah.
And so it's tough. And so like, especially on Instagram, to where like, or I try to change it to where like I'm tweaking colors, or I'm throwing like some filter on it, you know, to try to like avoid any copyright at all. So yeah, I don't think people take it into consideration 100%.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to do a little hard left. So one question I wanted to ask you, right, and I finally had the chance to, is you went to Coachella this year, right? And some of your shots, you're with, like Quavo and all these other guys. What was that experience like for you to be like kind of there and photographing celebrities like that?
Yeah, I mean, so I went to Coachella both weekends. That first weekend, I went with a client, Viola. So they're like a cannabis company. They're based here in LA. They have a couple other stores. They just opened their Michigan dispensary. And going to Coachella with them was awesome. I was like, hanging out with like J.R. Smith, and Quavo was there, and like, it was pretty unreal. But like, to be 100% honest, like when you're a photographer around those people, there's like two types of event photographers, and I don't think I fall in the category of either one of those event photographers, because like there's an event photographer who is shooting everything from like, they're shooting not only the celebrities and shit, but they're shooting like the food, they're shooting, like, I don't know, the fucking skyline, they're shooting everything possible to not miss any moments. Which is awesome. Then there's the event photographers who are just looking for those moments to like capture and make sure that they get. And for me, I was like a part of the team, and I was there to capture content, but I was there to capture content for their Instagram page. So like, I wasn't going to take pictures of, people sitting down or like, like other shit. Like I wanted to enjoy myself, but then also capture content that I knew would look good on their page. So like, it was definitely like it was a working experience, but at the same time, like, when the opportunities did come up, like, oh, Quavo and Al are shaking hands, like I need to capture that moment. Like those are like key moments that I was like trying to capture to make sure that I didn't miss, because if I would have missed it, they would have gone on my ass and been like, yo, like, what the fuck, like you missed like a cool moment that would have been cool for Instagram. And that's kind of like a way that I had to think for that. But I ran into a lot of people at the first weekend last year. It was or this year. It was because at the same event I ran into Summer Rae and Amanda Cerny and King Batch, and so like, hanging out with them for a little bit, and technology is kind of to the point to where I'm able to take a photo, Wi-Fi it to my phone and airdrop it to them, and it's like, you like to be a photographer out in the middle of the fucking desert. You take a photo, a great photo, and then you airdrop it to the person minutes later. Dude, like that's like, it's like instant gratification, like they're happy, you're happy, you kind of like deliver something to them. It was just like a great experience. But I've had other moments like that, like I shot like Janae Aiko a couple years ago at Coachella at one of her events, and then which led to me shooting like a sandal campaign for she like released sandals for a company. Yeah,
my girlfriend has those. That's she's a super Janae Aiko fan. She got the sandwich just because Janae Aiko has it. That's funny. That's really funny. That's cool, man. So then, how, obviously, like, you have your own personal photography as like Martin Depict, and then you have French Fry. How do you like split up your time between like both of those? So both sounds like huge dedications.
Yeah, I think right now I think most of the time has been going to French Fry this year, but then in the last 3 months, I've decided to just kind of like try to take on a lot more freelance work for myself. Because if you don't, at least for me, if I don't work on things that are taking me to the next step in my career, in my photography, I get really down on myself. And I saw that happening at the beginning of the year. And I just started realizing things that were like fucking with my head and fucking with my creative, like, mental state, to where like I did a podcast with a friend of mine, Alan, who is like a vet. And I talked to him about how I just started realizing as a Mexican in Southern California that life isn't fair, or life isn't as fair for us as it is for other races. And like, you know, like I never would have thought that. Like my mom never pulled me aside and said like, hey, you're Mexican, there's going to be some hardship for you.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. And like, to be honest, like I went to a good school. I got the opportunities that I feel like I got, like I could get. And I just felt like I could have done better, you know, if given certain opportunities.
Yeah.
And now I'm no one to complain. It was just kind of like me whining at the moment, but it was just kind of, it's a little difficult to think that, you know, like we have this dude in the office right now who is like, he just like talks down to people and, you know, doesn't really help the minorities as much.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like feels that because of that, it feels like I'm getting less opportunity. I'm not going exactly where I'm not going, like my trajectory of my career had to like either stall or I feel like had to like go around some things to keep moving forward. And yeah, like it got really weird, you know, like especially this year. And then, you know, like me just thinking of ways on how to like make it better, if there's anything that I could do moving forward. And yeah, like I came up with an idea for a foundation. I don't want to give away too much of that idea, but like it's definitely something that is going to be, that I'm going to be working on this next year or moving forward, because I think minority creatives, there's a lot of us out there, but like statistically on the census, there's a creative census that just got released to like people that, graphic designers, photographers, all these people that work in the creative field. 71% of those people are white. And then no other race is above 9%.
Oh, wow.
So that to me, like there's like a clear line of like, yeah, like there's a lot of people out there. Like when you look at the people that went to school for graphic design, it's still pretty scary, you know, but there's a lot more people, a lot more minorities that go to school for graphic design, but then they don't end up working in that field. That tells me that they're not giving them the opportunities. So I want to do something to help with that. And if by this time next year, if you talk to me, like if I can help a couple kids get to school or pay their tuition, or like help, you know, minority creatives just even realize like, yo, this is an option, and or help people that already have their degrees get the experience that they need because they weren't getting it anywhere else.
Yeah.
Awesome. Then that's, you know, that's I think that anyone that's in my position that is a working creative that has the opportunity to help other creatives, they should do it. I think as a photographer, not a lot of photographers think that way, because a lot of photographers are out there for themselves. Like, you know, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to share clients. They don't want to give out names. You know, everyone is out for themselves, and understandable. But at the same time, you know, like, you know, making sure that people that I'm giving back as much as I'm helping myself, I guess. And so like back to answering, sorry, I keep going off on tangents, but like, I think moving forward, I think I'll probably split up my time to where it's like 40% French fry, and I'll have a couple assistants at the office that'll be helping me, you know, move French fry forward, and kind of evolve that company. And then I'll probably do another 40% to my own freelance work and my just creativity, because if I don't progress as a photographer, as a designer, French fry doesn't go anywhere. So like if I'm getting clients that are wanting, you know, they want a specific shot that I've never done before, you know, and I have to learn on the whim, you know, that's something that I need to gain experience on quickly, you know, watching, you know, YouTube tutorials or Skillshare classes. Lynda.com has been my best friend since I went to college. Like, it's one of those things where I'm constantly teaching myself things. I taught myself Premiere Pro, started learning it 2 years ago. I feel like I've really gotten a good handle on it this year. And it's been one of those things to where like I need to, finding a balance is always hard, but once you find your purpose or figure out a way on how to balance everything, I think you're good. I don't know if that answered your question.
That's still a good answer. I'll take it. All right, Martin. We're at a point. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
When is the next model mini going to come out?
Man, I honestly, because this next year, like I said, I'm going to be doing a lot. I'm going to be concentrating on myself a lot more.
Yeah.
For sure, I'll probably put out a couple more model minis and a couple more YouTube videos. I mean, now that I'm about to make like my first $100, like once I get that check, I'm like, okay, like this is, it's not a lot of money, but like I made like my first check on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things to where like I do feel like I can make the content that's good enough that would attract viewers and subscribers. But it's also like figuring out a way to like progress that in a way, like to where I want to share my platform with others. Like, Depict doesn't just have to be me. I never intended it for it to just be me. I think, Depict was always supposed to be like an idea and a brand. And so for me to just tie my name to it, it just made me kind of like want to work at it harder and harder and harder. And it brought it to where it is today. And I can't complain about that. And, if I can turn the Depict YouTube channel into something to where I have multiple creators, giving me content for or uploading content to, awesome. As long as we all are moving to the same goal, that makes it worth it for me. And I think it goes back to like the same idea of the foundation that I'm working on and all that stuff. Like I want it all to culminate with and all work together. Like it goes back to like podcast that like I started a couple years ago. I mean, to think of like where podcast was 4 years ago to where it is now, it's like so crazy. And so like keeping up with the podcast, keeping up with my Instagram, keeping up with my own personal work, freelance, keeping up with French Fry, and then keeping up with YouTube, like all that stuff. Oh, and then also the foundation. So I will have to try to balance all that stuff. Yeah. And I'm not going to be able to do that alone. And so like I said, getting assistants or people to be on my team, I think that's probably my next big step, is finding people to really work with and to finding people that have the same goal or like-mindedness as me.
Interesting. Will be interesting 2020 for you. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Martin. Thank you for joining me, man. It's a great podcast. I'm hoping to release it soon, and hopefully everyone can see this.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep. I'll go ahead and see you later. All right, man?
Later, man.
Bye.